Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the What Would You Change podcast. We are the Super Monkey Fighters. I am Loki here with Papa Nugget and Monkey Feathers. How's it going?
Hello.
Good.
This week on our What Would You Change movie podcast, we're going to be going through the 1995 movie Heat, most famously known for the first time Robert De Niro and Al Pacino shared the screen together. They were both in Godfather Part 2, but they weren't in any scenes together, so... Directed by Michael Mann, stars, of course, Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and pretty much everyone else you have ever seen in a movie except for Tom Cruise. Very large list of people that you will recognize, most of them. You have Val Kilmer, Jon Voight, Tom Sizemore, Amy Brenneman, Ashley Judd, McCauley Williams, Wes Studi, Ted Levine, William Fichtner, Dennis Haysbert, Natalie Portman is in it. And the list goes on and on. Henry Rollins, that's the one I can't forget. Henry Rollins is in this movie. That's how wide the casting list goes on this. Even Martin Ferrero, because he just popped up there. He was famous as the lawyer from Jurassic Park. He is also in this movie. So, if you don't know what the movie is, it's a group of professional bank robbers. They start to feel the heat from police when they unknowingly leave a clue at their latest heist. It's a heist movie. It's Robert De Niro runs a crew of robbers, bank robbers, and just really high skilled criminals who know what they're doing. And Al Pacino runs the police task force trying to find them. So, what do you guys think, Monkey Feathers?
I think overall, I actually did like this movie. I did find it... It's hard to say because this was in 1995, but there were some cliches when it came to the movie, and it's possible that these just spawned the cliches for the movies to come after it. But one thing that I did like was Robert De Niro's character, Neil. He was really smart, and he knew what he was doing when it came to the heist, but he was still someone who wanted to, in a way, escape it. Because when he starts up a relationship with Edie, it felt like it was an escapist relationship, that it was a home away from home, because he loved doing heists, he loved stealing money or anything that he could probably get his hands on. But at the same time, he did kind of want a relationship. So that was something that I enjoyed, actually.
So I would question if he loved it, or that's just what he did. That's just who he was.
Well, the diner scene with Al Pacino's character, where that's another scene that I really enjoyed. The whole, do you want to get a cup of coffee? Sure. Okay, follow me. And then they just drive to a diner and they're having coffee. I enjoyed that scene because they were being honest about who they were as characters, what they wanted in life. And to me, I felt that he actually did say that he loved what he did and he wouldn't do anything else but that. So...
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of the things I think that kind of goes back and forth with a lot of people with kind of their vocation is you're good at it, so you do it, rather than you do it because you love it. It's kind of that mix of things. It's like, are you doing this because it's something you actually enjoy and you get, because you genuinely love it, or is it just you're really good at it, so you're just going to keep doing it until you retire and leave?
And in that same scene, he says that he's not doing what he wants to yet.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked whether he loves it or he's just doing it because, like he said, he's good at it.
Yeah.
And he's been able to persist it and make it profitable for him.
And that's kind of the way that I look at it with that, where that's there are two sides to that, because that comes up a lot. The two sides to the coin. I think De Niro he's good at it. That's why he's doing it. And Pacino he loves it. Like, that's what he lives for. He doesn't live for anything else. Like, everything else to him is the stuff you've got to do on the outside. So it's that's kind of the flip side of it. Is Pacino's more the obsessed.
He's letting everything else fall apart while he's
letting everything else fall
that.
apart because of that. Even when he's there, like he's like, no, I'm going to be here until he gets a page. Now, I think that scene, that pivotal scene in the diner, I mean, that's what this movie's about. Everything else is kind of built around that.
Yep.
That moment, not just in the movie, but within the characters, within the actors, that was...
The movie's about those two characters.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
And that scene, I think, is fantastic. It's perfect. I think that's the highlight. I mean, if you were to say, what's this movie about? Again, like I said earlier, that's it. That's my favorite part of this whole thing. It's not the shootout. It's not any of those kinds of things. It's that scene with those two, face to face. So yeah, that's my big like. There's a lot of other little likes and a lot of little gripes and things like that. But
and even that scene in the diner where they were both talking about how they would basically end each other if push came to shove. Yeah. And at the end of the movie where Al Pacino's character takes out Robert De Niro's character, the reaching out of the hand and then the grasping of the hand.
Yeah.
It to me kind of
it was weird because they didn't highlight it. Like it was there, but like they didn't really highlight it. It was in the dark, so it was very easy to miss.
Because it does end with that wide shot at the airport with the lights where you can see that that's kind of what's going on, but there's I think one close up as they grasp hands, but then it focuses entirely on Al Pacino. It's all his response, it's all his reactions and those kinds of things, and then it's not as big of a moment as you would have thought after everything, but.
And I felt it worked because, in my opinion, it signified kind of a respect between these two people, whether or not they were on two separate sides of the law. They, in a way, still respected each other and what they did.
Well, and they had already kind of explained that moment earlier, right? So you don't need, it really gets to a frantic pace in all of that because they're rushing to get him before he leaves, and it's a whole, everything's kind of all coming together, which is one thing that kind of stood out to me this time because, again, I've seen this 100 times, and I forget his name. He's the Allstate man. Anyway, it just makes sense to me because I've seen it so many times where it's just like, oh, right, you see him and, his wife drops him off. He's a parolee. His wife drops him off to get this job, and there's these couple of little scenes where he just shows up. Like, I was very aware of that this time where it's like, if you don't know who that guy is, that might not make sense. And that might be something that pulls you out of the movie until it all ties in at the end. And I think there's a lot of those little threads with this movie where there's a lot of storylines going on.
Yep.
And a lot of things that don't really fit until the end where they all kind of pull them together. With the exception of the serial killer, they don't really tie that into the main story at all. He comes into the crew at the beginning. He's clearly a psychopath. They try to kill him, but he escapes. And then he's off killing hookers, and Al Pacino's investigating them, but they don't really tie those into, oh, hey, this is the guy who was doing that kind of a thing at all, which, that's, again, just being hyper aware of that. You've got a lot of storylines here that all pull together, and that one didn't. It was just kind of like, wow, that's an odd one. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I like Val Kilmer in this. I like Ashley Judd in this, which I don't normally like. People I don't normally like in movies. I like those kinds of things. I like how smart they are. These are really intelligent criminals, and these are some of the best cops out there tracking them. But they're both still make mistakes. I do like that aspect of it, where it's not like, oh, you're perfect and you guys are geniuses. Like,
well, and even the
they do some pretty basic things where they leave Wayne Grow until the end, right? They don't make that a point to kind of wrap that guy up.
Yeah,
early on.
But you also see how their emotions control them, even though they're smart and methodical and logical. Their emotions between all of the characters still play a very integral part in the way that they make their decisions.
to give context to this, Val Kilmer and Ashley Judd play like husband and wife. They're estranged, but they play husband and wife. But Ashley Judd's character is tasked with bringing in her ex-husband or estranged husband, and she goes out onto the balcony, the deck, whatever it is, and they know each other so well that she can look at him, make a simple gesture with her hand, and he knows not to do anything but to escape. Yeah. And it's situations like that, they're smart. They've worked together and they know each other's tells to be able to say, okay, I can't come to you, otherwise I'm going to be arrested.
And and the emotions are all still there. It's a difficult situation, I should say, for them, where they are making difficult decisions that might lead to bad things, but it ends up kind of working out for them, I guess. Maybe that's another one of those, like, that one does never really get
resolved.
It just that's the
another
one
that never. That's it. Like, that's all we know, and then it drifts off.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't have the finality of a lot of the other ones. I mean, it just kind of leaves it open to where you're like, okay, what happens? Does he get away? Do they get together? There's a few things that they kind of leave out, but they do really tie up a lot in this movie that just seems like it would be random otherwise. And I think to not do that would have been just a complete disservice to all of it. Going back to Danny Trejo, where he's their getaway driver, but he has to be replaced last minute because the cops are tailing him and he can't lose the tail. And then because of all of the other twisting storylines, he ends up getting murdered.
He doesn't quite get murdered.
Yeah,
Neil
does
Robert De Niro
kill him at the end.
He puts him out of his misery.
Yeah.
But that's one of those things where they think that he gave him up in the end, and then it's like, well, no, this is bringing back this character that you guys kind of left, out in the wind, and you probably shouldn't have. And so we should talk about the gunfight, because that is one thing this movie was famous for as well, is the bank heist
in a good way.
That good, in a good way. Like, this felt a lot more realistic, especially for the time period. Like, looking at this 25 years later, it doesn't, because you look at John Wick, and John Wick is an over-the-top action movie, but the action in it feels realistic. It feels like it's something that somebody who really knows what they're doing is going to be doing. And so, and this is also before Matrix era, to bring Keanu Reeves back into this, is, the Matrix defined action moving forward. I think this was kind of one of those two where people started to try and be a little bit more realistic with those kinds of things.
The thing that I would say, on a positive note about the shootout is it seemed like they were moving like they knew what they were doing. They were basically doing like 3 to 5 second rushes, and they were covering each other as they were moving. So it's like they were working as a team. And that just adds to the believability that they knew what they were doing. It wasn't just, we're going to run out and just start shooting and run around.
I dislike the fact that the cops have such horrible aim, except for the
like stormtroopers.
Yes, the joke, the stormtrooper joke.
Yeah.
Except for the 2 detectives, and only when it's crucial for the plot.
I mean,
because Al Pacino shoots out the dude in the head who's holding the child. I can't remember his character in the movie.
Which would never happen.
But
never. That would never happen in real life.
No. Or when the other detective shoots out Val Kilmer's character, but only hits him in the neck so that he can still survive. And all the other cops, all the other people who were on the scene, the good guys, have horrible aim, and so they're all dying. But then you have the 3 bad guys who have such good aim, and they're taking out all of these cops, and they don't take any damage except for when it's crucial to the plot.
A lot of it as well is just superior firepower. It's just start shooting, keep shooting. Everybody else will keep their heads down, and ultimately, yes, it is a movie. They're, they do have more than just body armor on. They've got plot armor until they need to be, taken out. But that really is the undoing of their entire crew because they're not as good as they think. Right? I mean, they point out
never
early
had
on in the movie
this big of a fight, like an upfront bare knuckle fight.
Yeah, they've got plans as to what to do, but ultimately you can't plan for everything and things go wrong, and you're not going to be able to, fight your way out of it, and you're not going to be able to, think your way or talk your way out of it. It's like, this is the way it's going to be, and that's the way it's going to go. But they establish early on their first heist, as soon as Wayne Gross shoots the guy, which is really stupid that he would do that, and that they wouldn't have vetted this guy a little bit more. But
and why was he there? Because I question why they didn't need him.
Yeah. I guess they just needed an extra guy. And
they just pick him up.
Like they need an extra guy.
They don't even talk. But
they establish they establish that these guys are smart enough to know that once one security guard's dead, you don't 3 murders versus 1 murder is no different.
Yeah. You're all in.
You're all going to the electric chair, so you might as well take out all the witnesses. And that's mirrored in this gunfight. Like as soon as Val Kilmer sees the cops across the street, he doesn't hesitate. They should have the drop on them, but the cops should have the drop on the criminals, but the criminals fire first, and they just go. They just react and they move, and they just even the random fry cook that they picked up as their replacement driver, like he knows, just go. Like, they do know those kinds of things. And so.
Well, and even in that scene, you have the criminals who are just going and they're just shooting and they're just shooting. Did they ever reload their weapons?
Oh, yeah.
Because you actually see Al Pacino's character.
Yeah. So,
well, you actually see Al Pacino's character reload.
Yeah,
so
and they would say moving, and they would say
didn't ever seem like they reloaded. That they just had magic guns that had unlimited ammo.
I'm glad, I actually saw them with extra magazines on them.
Yeah,
let's not just when they walk into I have one gun and one magazine. Yeah. Ooh, and unlimited bullets in it.
It is one of the negatives of that, where they robbed $13 million, something like that, from this bank.
Yeah, that's like some heavy money to be
like the security guards that are there are like police officer, like they're uniformed security guards who are there for high security guards, and these guys walk in with just guns underneath their jackets, and it's like these guys obviously look like they're going to rob a bank before they even put their masks on, kind of thing. Like
not only that, but they put their masks on in the bank as if that's going to somehow hide their identity, that they've been. Well, no one's going to notice that. Oh, he's putting on a mask now.
Yeah. By the time everything kicks off, you're not paying attention to the dude who was standing 10 feet away from you before. So, and they did make a point because my wife was like, well, they got security cameras everywhere. I was like, no, they made a point to talk about how they were taking care of all of that.
Yeah. They cut them.
But it was also like so much going on. It's easy to forget those kinds of things. And so,
one of the 10,000 sidelines.
Yeah. That's like the whole reason that job was set up was, the guy who set it up was like, no, here's how we're going to get through all of it. So, because that was 2 hours earlier in the movie.
Yeah. So the one issue I have with the shootout was, so De Niro and Kilmer end up together, right? And they kind of go their own way. And then I don't remember the other character's name.
Sizemore.
Yeah. But he's the one that picks up the little girl and gets taken out by Pacino. But I don't know if it was just me, but it seemed like Pacino was like running back and forth between two battles.
Oh yeah.
How they're split up and he's just running back and forth.
So he kind of doubles back.
And he's always in the, he's throughout the entire movie, he's always there where the action is. Even with when they got made and there's the 2 detectives or whatever up on the oil tank, taking pictures and with their little sound satellite thing. He's down on the ground sitting next to the car. It's he's always there. And it's I get it, but it's
he's also shaken down informants, and he's he does tend to be everywhere.
He would be a terrible boss. He would be the micromanager from hell that just does everything.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, he doesn't ever close helicopter doors.
He doesn't do anything.
he randomly has a lot of access to helicopters, but he never once closes the helicopter doors. Like,
because there's always people around to do that for him.
There's always somebody else to do that for him. And it's
like
very
the
much
beginning where he's like, you go do this, and he's just telling everyone what to do. But it's even like,
he's
anything that he should probably do himself. He wants someone else to do.
Yeah, and I want to say I haven't looked it up before this, but there was a theory that he's on cocaine the entire time. The character is
I would not be surprised
a cocaine addict, and I think that they came out and said like, that's part of his backstory is like he's as much of a criminal as anybody else. Like,
and that's what I was thinking throughout this. It's like he does not like. Either it was completely intentional or it was a terrible casting decision to choose him to be that character, because he plays the part like a corrupt cop. He doesn't play it like a straight cop, but he is a straight cop.
Well, to our knowledge, anyway.
Yeah.
Because we don't know much about...
but he still does, give things to informants to help them out, those kinds of things. Like he is playing that game within those kinds of things. But that's one of the things that they really showcase with this. It's part of that, two sides of the same coin. Like they really showcase the criminal crew, the thieving crew, and the detective crew are one and the same. I mean, they're just two sides of the same thing. It's like, one side just happens to have badges and the other side doesn't. Like,
and that's why the whole diner scene is such a big thing, because it's like take everything else out. Like they can be like best friends, right? Like they'd get along great, but you put in who they are and what they stand for, then they're polar opposites at that point. Even though as people, they could easily be friends.
So now that we're firmly into dislikes.
One kind of huge thing that I have issues with this movie is it's almost 3 hours long, and there are so many side plots to this movie. And you might be able to say, well, they weave back into each other a little bit towards the end and things kind of get resolved. But it just felt like another side story and another side story and another side story. You have Natalie Portman, who plays Al Pacino's stepdaughter, and she's unstable and she wants to see her dad, but then you never see her dad.
Yeah.
And she kind of freaks out, but then somehow she ends up in Al Pacino's hotel room because she then cut her wrist, I think she cut her wrist, but then in the hospital it looked like she cut her leg because of how much blood was on the leg.
She did both. Yeah.
Okay. Because I thought that she just cut the wrist.
She's got a lot of anxiety. Her mom doesn't really pay attention to her. Her dad's just non-existent. And Al Pacino's been the only one who's been engaged with her and interested in her.
Which is the weirdest person to be the one that is.
Yeah. And that's kind of the only personal relationship I think that he really put any stock into. And it was more, even though it wasn't like a parent-child relationship, it was more like, this is a person who's needs to be saved. Yeah. Which is kind of how I think he looks at everybody else, as he's the protector, and that's really what that more felt like as well, was he saw her the same way that he saw the victims of the crimes that he was investigating, or the family members of those, so.
And that's another side story that just, why is it here?
Yeah.
Because I get that it might help to criminalize the serial killer who's Waingro. Yeah. But even then, why is it there?
If the fact that they didn't tie it back in somehow at the end is really what, like, they do a really good job of that. But those are the two, because Natalie Portman, attempts suicide. She chooses him. They have that scene where it's just like, are we okay? Is him and his ex-wife, his wife, because she's cheated on him and they're breaking up, and it's like, are they getting back together? What's going on? Is he still going to be part of his life? And then his pager goes off and he's gone. And then that's the end of that. So,
But they still kiss and like they're like it's cool.
Yeah, they're still okay. And she's like, okay, yeah, it's good. You can leave. I've got this. And it's like, really? This is kind of the biggest moment of, yeah, okay. Anyway, I look at that one as like it could be completely removed and the movie would be unchanged, but it's still good. Like the acting in it's good. The interactions are good. And so it's, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting choice to have as part of all of this. So
for me, with how many side stories, you then just get an insight into how poorly the women are treated in this film. Because you have Al Pacino and his relationship with his wife, and they're at odds a lot with each other. And one of the scenes that she it's kind of like her breaking point is, I was told that I would share you with your job, but this isn't sharing you. This is leftovers, because he doesn't put effort in the relationship. He's just always so focused on the job.
Yeah, that's one where I don't see that one as a clear cut, she has her fair share of. There's a scene early on. It's actually right after the opening heist. There's the dead officers there, and it's the introduction of him, and he comes back home, and it's she's like, I had dinner ready 4 hours ago, and all those kinds of things. He actually reaches out to her for some empathy and for some connection, and she just kind of turns and walks away. And so you can kind of see that arc of their relationship where it's like, okay, this isn't going to work, and he put in, kind of he didn't overtly say it. He didn't do it in a healthy way, but he did reach out to her and was kind of denied. And it's as a result of all those kinds of things. And it's not acknowledging her feelings in any of it, but it's not like Ashley Judd's character where she's just like, she cheats on her husband as well, but
she wants out. She wants out. And then Neil, he breaks into her apartment and says, no, you're going back to him. You're giving him one more chance.
Well,
how fair is that to just say, you have no choice in this but to go back to him?
Well, he's looking out for his friend at that point.
Yeah.
So it's one, he's looking out for his friend, and two, he's trying to protect the entire crew because she knows details about it.
Yeah.
He's a criminal.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that.
I know. But it just starts. Situations like this just start to highlight how the women are treated. You take Edie with Robert De Niro, Neil's character, Robert De Niro, Neil, where she finally finds out that he's a criminal and she wants to leave. Well, he runs after her, drags her back, and they get into the whole, I don't want to be with you, but fine, I kind of forgive you. Which, whatever, fine, she forgives him. But then when he's about to get on the plane and he sees Al Pacino's character and then just leaves her in the airport.
Well, that's also glossing over the fact that, I mean, he was, again, in self-preservation where she knows what's going on. She knows where he is. She's going to run to the cops. He's stopping that. But then when she says, "What are you going to let me leave?" And he's just like, "Go now." I'm not like, he does come out as kind of the better character in all of those because he does give her the out. He does give her the chance to leave and she chooses to stay. And that's glossing over the other scene that comes afterwards where he's just like, "Look, I don't want to, like, there's no point in going on if it's not with you." Like, but
even then, he still goes on and he runs away from her car at the very end scene.
So I think that's a very important scene. His decision because they were going to the airport, like they were set. As he put it, he's home free, right? And you could see the internal struggle in him that he knows Wayne grows out there, and he's battling. He's internally battling. Do I go to the airport or do I go and take out Wayne Grow? And he chooses Wayne Grow because that's who he is. No matter how much he wants to be like, I want to get rid of it. I want to start a new life. That's who he is. He can't, and he couldn't take it. He had to go.
Well, and in the moment where he's looking at Edie and he's looking at Al Pacino running towards him, if he gets in the car, he makes her an accessory. If he walks away from it, like he's always said, she's scot-free. Like there's no criminal implications for her at all.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point in time, she's become an accomplice. And so there's that struggle with him as well, where it's he's sticking to who he is because he's always said you walk away from it, and it's not fair. And
but he's making the smart decision,
and he's making the decisions that it's not malicious intent. Whereas I think the Val Kilmer and Ashley Judd, there's a lot of malicious intent back and forth with those two. So it's not as clear cut where, she's treated poorly because, they're treating each other poorly. And that's Al Pacino and his wife in this one as well. Yeah. They're treating each other poorly. It's not, one side's a victim and one side's a victimizer. It's a more complex situation than that. Where I think Al Pacino or Robert De Niro's is a little bit more, it's a little simpler because he is just, this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is what I'm, he's stuck in that mindset. Let's transition into what we would change, if anything.
Well, I would change all of the Babylon side stories because as much as I want to know everything about every character in the movie, especially a movie that has such a large cast, I think it should be whittled down significantly, or at least to the point where reduce the blast area around the two main characters. Like, I still don't understand parts of the twists and turns on how Pacino really figured out that they were going to be robbing it and like how they got there. And
so the bank was Waingro. Waingro went and got the information out of Danny Trejo, and he was the random informant. But that's where it hits the point in the movie where it's like we've been telling this story for so long. Now we need to wrap it up. Just start rapid firing everything. Like the last 20 minutes of the movie.
It felt like it was going at a kind of a steady pace. And then all of a sudden it's like a bunch of stuff happened and they're robbing a bank now. And now Pacino's on him and he figured it out. And he was there in 10 minutes. Whoa! The entire city's on him. And then it's like, okay.
Well, it's because he doesn't waste time. No. It's because he doesn't waste time closing helicopter doors. He's got to get there quick. So, but yeah, that's really what it is. Like, they're telling this long, intricate, detailed story, or they're weaving these storylines together, and then it gets to the end, it's just like, we're gonna go, we're done. Like, and it all just ends in a shootout at the airport. I do agree. I would probably pull out some of those storylines.
Yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of good things going for it.
And it does. I don't disagree that you could easily cut out, like we talked about, you could cut out Natalie Portman entirely. And I think you would be missing a great performance and some great scenes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But you could cut out 25 minutes of the movie right there. Yeah. Like, there's literally a scene where she's just sitting at a bus stop and Al Pacino pulls up like, oh, did you forget your mom was going to pick you up? She's like, no, I just wanted to be alone. Like, and then because they don't really tie that up at the end. Like, they leave that thread kind of hanging a little bit.
Like, they just use her as a plot device to bring Pacino and his wife together, kind of, in the end. Maybe?
Yeah. Maybe.
Probably not, but yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of those little, just like everybody that shows up, like you could cut out the whole scene with, it's Jeremy Piven's character shows up. It's after the shootout where he's the doctor who fixes up Val Kilmer. Mm-hmm. Like, you could cut a lot of those little things out. And the movie would feel like, I don't feel like the movie drug on to me. It never really has felt like a 3.5 hour movie. It feels like it's a really solid, tight, everything kind of flows together. But I could easily see where you could cut out half of the movie and it would still make sense. Like, it's still a solid, well put together film.
Like, even if you trimmed it down to 2 hours, like, I think that would, just from an appeal perspective, I think more people would enjoy the film.
I think that too many characters had too much backstory or confusing stories, because the Allstate guy, when, like, he's brought in and you kind of get a little bit of backstory between him and his wife, and Now
I
he's a
didn't even
cook
know it
for
was
a
his
restaurant.
wife.
Yeah.
I know
Or
it
maybe
was
it's his
someone-
girlfriend.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
were they married?
I don't know. But now he's working as a busboy, cook, garbage man for this restaurant. And now he's the driver, but then he dies in the shootout. So he had maybe
They needed someone.
15, but maybe like a
It's-
15, 20-minute story.
It's strange because these things, like thinking through a lot of these things, this would have fit really well in a miniseries or a TV. Like,
Yeah.
if this were the story of The Wire, people would be all over it.
Sure.
Because you could go into all these details and you could have these characters show up for a couple of episodes, but it's a movie. And so it's kind of harder to tell, I think, that story there.
Well, and you have Danny Trejo's character where he's lying on the ground. He knows that he can't go on. But in that conversation, you find out, I can't go on because my wife's gone and all that. But you got no, it's some characters got backstory and then some characters didn't. But it wasn't balanced. And then you're confused about, like, why do I care about his wife? Because he had maybe 2 minutes of screen time, but now I'm supposed to care that he's about to die and his wife's dead. And yeah, sure, he was the informant that kind of ratted out the crew of what was going on. But there was just so much information that was kind of thrown at you that you're then supposed to remember.
Yeah.
But you can't because it's so many side stories that it was hard to keep track for me as I was watching it.
Yeah. And I think so, as much as we talk about character development, like this movie, like they went balls to the wall on character development, which I give them props. But like this, I think this is a little bit of an example on when you take it a little too far.
Yeah.
And try to go too broad.
Like, she gets closure, right? She sees the news report that he died, and you can see, you can see how that, you don't see everything. You got to fill in, you got to fill things in a little bit on your own, but you can see her reaction. Like, why would you show that? Like, he was only there to fill in because you had this other story going on, right? Like, but that character still gets closure. That they still have some development within that, and you're like, I don't know if she even had a name. Like, I don't know if she was a named character in the movie. And even speaking of the Jeremy Piven with the doctor, right? They get people who are acting and they give them the room to act, and they play their part really well. And I think that lends to the story, but also drags it out because you're like, why do I care that the random mob doctor
in the one scene he ever exists,
the one scene he's in, like, why is this scene even there? Because that's easily handled with a bit of dialogue on the phone when he's talking to Jon Voight. Like, hey, did he make it there? Is he okay? Yep, everything's good. Oh, all right. There you go. Like, you don't have to have a whole scene and another character and those kinds of things.
I don't know if I like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro as opposing characters.
I will say the next time
I think they look too similar to me and are similar enough to me that it just, I don't know, it doesn't work.
The next time they were together was the movie Righteous Kill, which I don't remember a ton about. I just remember I didn't like it and it was kind of dumb. Just felt very generic. And then The Irishman, another 4.5 hour long movie. It's a send off to every mafia movie ever. If you've got 5 hours, it's definitely worth a watch.
I think I started watching it and then I realized it was 5 hours and then I stopped.
Yeah. But it's interesting to see them together where it's like, there is, these are the two kind of quintessential gangsters from American cinema. And that's, to see them together is,
like, I think they're great actors. I just think they should stand on their own. Like, putting them together just doesn't work for me.
And maybe that's why it took them, this was 95. They came up in the 70s. So, 20, 30 years before they finally got together on screen. Like I said, they were both in The Godfather Part 2, but De Niro plays the old Godfather in flashbacks. So it's, they're not on screen together. Yeah. So I think maybe that's part of why they've not made it a habitual constant thing where you'd think that they would play together a lot more. But
because there's a lot of that. Even within this film, like, I feel like they should be on the same side of the story.
Yeah.
not on opposite sides of the story.
Yeah, which maybe works for that both sides or different sides of the same coin kind of thing, right? They are the same person.
Like I get it, it works. It works logically, but for me it was weird.
I will say this: there's one other thing I would change. Some of the death scenes are very much over the top, like black and white classic cinema, ridiculous death scenes.
Like the one cop that died in the shootout.
The one cop that died in the shootout. Yep, exactly that exact thing. Who is Buffalo Bill? It's the same actor, Ted Levine, who plays Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. Is also the detective in the series Monk. But yeah, over the top. And then when Wayne Grove finally does get shot at the end, that weird like action hero-ish kind of scene where he's like, look at me, and he finally looks up and then he shoots him in the chest and like those kinds of things are weird things that show up in movies that just don't have those is my just change those scenes. Like have those scenes, don't not kill off those characters, but don't have them ridiculous over the top. It's like old war movies when somebody gets shot and they go and then fall forward. Like, no, you just got shot in you're not okay. Anyway, that's more just kind of how I feel with that. So, and I think with that note, on those amazing facial expressions from Papa Nugget and myself, I think we'll end this episode of What Would You Change? Let us know what you guys think of Heat. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I'm sure it's available everywhere. If not, take the time to see it. Like, I think overall we would all probably recommend this. I don't think I would say avoid this one the way I've avoided a few others. Just know what you're getting into. It's a long haul. Like, yeah. I've certainly watched shorter movies that felt longer. So yeah, anyway, leave comments down below. Let us know what we should watch next. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you think about me wearing a hood through the entire thing. And check out our merch. Monkey Feathers is wearing a hat. Nugget has a hoodie. That works fantastic with green screens.
It's green screen, non-approved.
Non-approved hoodie.
And we will catch you guys in the next one. Adios.
See ya.